Hi, everyone, and welcome to the Paddle Pod, your weekly podcast covering professional paddle presented by Hugo and Gons. We're on to episode 104. And as always, joined by my co-host Hugo here today. Hugo, it's great to have you on. How you doing?
I'm very well, thanks, Gons. A bit of a different episode for us, right? Neither of us are recording in Madrid, which is where we both live. We're both now on holiday. Well, I'm technically not on holiday. I'm still just working
Yeah, I was
from
gonna
home.
say, it seemed like
Yeah,
you were
no.
working today.
Yeah, I am. I am working.
It's a
I'm
shame.
working until for the next couple of weeks. So basically, when you come back to work, I start holidays. It's basically how I had to work it out due to other commitments. But anyway, still working. But yeah, not many people replying to emails, as you can imagine.
Yeah.
But I am jealous of you just being fully free now.
Yeah, exactly. By the way, was it always planned like that? Like, were you always taking the further weeks of, or was it
Yeah,
recent?
but basically it's because at the end of August, I'm going to Menorca with my father's family. And so what I didn't really, and I need to take those days off because I can't really remote work from there, whereas I can easily remote work at home down
Mm.
at my parents' house. So it was like, do I take a week off now and then a week off at the end? It's just a bit strange. So yeah, works out like this. And yeah, not too bad. I'll be
Yeah.
taking, the piss out you when you come back and I go on holiday.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Yeah. I mean, at the end of the day, you will get your break, and I totally get it. Like, I hate those like breaks or like seeing people when they take like, 1 week here and then like 2 weeks later they take like another week. It's like, why don't you just want like a full break, long, instead of just taking little bits here and there. I don't think it makes a lot of sense because you don't really like rest or anything like that.
No, but funnily enough, I've read an article recently, and actually my CEO was talking about this on our group call last week, saying that they used to say that 2 week breaks were like a must at some point during the year.
Yeah.
But now they're saying that a week's break is scientifically more recommended because it's enough for you to fully disconnect. But then when you come back, you're still kind of still in the hang of things and it's
Mm.
not as hard to get back into the loop. Like basically, you suffer from depression and being pissed off about going back to work if you take a shorter break. So I don't know. I don't know what's best.
Yeah, I mean, to be fair, I can also see the point of that. But I mean, speaking about holidays, I guess paddle players are now on holiday because officially the Tarragona P1 has ended, and it's a long break until the next tournament in Madrid, the P1 in Madrid, which will start I think the first week of September, if I'm not mistaken. They have a little nut break. I do think that obviously they won't be spending all the time away from the paddle court. Surely they'll also use this time to work on maybe physical training. I'm sure a lot of like drills and like things about maybe improving their techniques as they head towards the second half of the season. But of course, we wanted to use this time to speak about the Tarragona P1, which was a nice little tournament to kind of see off the first half of the year. And yeah, I mean, straight away, just want to kick things off with the final and kind of the main event. We saw it again, El Clasico with Coello Tapia against Chingotto and Galán. And once again, it seems like Coello and Tapia are a bit on a roll and kind of asserting their dominance for really if any of us had any kind of doubts and maybe saw some cracks, I think they've kind of put it, they've kind of put like everything to bed, every statement about them not being on top form to bed, because I think what they've been able to do, the really since that loss that they had against the Chingalan, I think they silenced everyone, including myself. So I would say I had a not doubts on them that they were gonna fall off or anything like that, but I did see that Chingalan were kind of maybe edging or getting a bit closer. But I think really, these last couple of tournaments, they've showed that, they're really a level above everyone else.
I mean, firstly, I want to share with our fans that you and I were both as bored as they are of watching the same final and having the same outcome week after week. I mean, we're both massive Coello and Tapia fans, so don't get me wrong. I'm very happy that they're still dominating. And I don't agree with people saying it's bad for paddle because at the end of the day, it just means that other pairs are going to work even harder to overcome what, from a trophy perspective, is the second best pair ever because they've
That's
now
nuts.
racked 37 trophies together. They've just overcome Bela and Lima, who had 36. I mean, they've still got a very long way to go to get to Juan Martín Díaz and Fernando Velasteguín. If I'm not mistaken, it's something like 100 and something trophies together. So
I mean,
unlikely that will
yeah,
happen.
there were other times, of course.
there were other times, and also from a number of or period of time as the number one pair, I do still think that Lebrón and Galán are ahead of them. So a lot of achievements left, but as I say, I don't think it's bad for paddle. I just think the level is so high that other pairs are going to continue to increase it, and I do think other pairs are playing better and better. It's just that Coello and Tapia are currently a level above everyone else. I've got to say that myself, I really didn't have a huge doubt on them continuing their dominance after that Chingalan win, just because I didn't have that same feeling with Chingalan that I had last year when they were really kind of in Coello and Tapia's heads, particularly Chingotto in Coello's head. And we saw Coello kind of losing his head a bit every now and then in some previous encounters during 2024. I think he's really stepped up his game. So, yeah, I mean, I don't want to talk too much about the final because it almost feels like the story that never ends. But it was obviously a very, very close affair. I mean, 7-6, 7-5. But even though from a, statistical point of view, it was quite even, I always had the feeling, and we've said this a lot of times over recent weeks, that Coello and Tapia had the upper hand. I mean, they generated 6 break points in the first set, if I'm not mistaken. Chingalan had 1. Neither pair converted any, and that's why the tiebreak was won by Coello and Tapia. Now, Coello and Tapia were 6-1 up in the tiebreak at one point, which showed that, when it really mattered, they were there. And even in the second set, they had a match point when they were 5-4 up and Chingalan were serving, and then they generated various break points when it was 6-5 up. So in those key games, they kind of very easily got ahead. Now, yes, they're playing, I'd say at their very best from both Coello and Tapia. I think you can see that from their smashing in particular. It's been at their best, probably the highest level that we've seen from them, and kind of at the peak that they were demonstrating from a smashing perspective back in 2024 and 2023. So I think when you see them smashing that well, you can kind of see that the touch is there and they're feeling at their best. But I do also want to point out that I've had the feeling that Chingotto and Galán are perhaps, not that they aren't playing well, but they are not playing that well in the key moments during these encounters. I think Chingotto, from his perspective, he's increased his unforced error count a lot in key moments of matches, which is not something that he was used to doing. Like, for example, a lot of mistakes on returns of serves, even some slightly
I thought both of them
unusual.
had trouble with that this
Yeah,
match.
they definitely did. I just kind of felt that Chingotto maybe a little bit more. And also with some of his bandejas and volleys going long, it just felt like it was kind of slightly off. And then from Galan's perspective, I think that there was a moment in the second set, because I felt that the tiebreak of the first set was a big letdown from Chingotto. He made a lot of mistakes, whereas Galán just basically wasn't involved that much because Coello and Tapia were doing a good job of freezing him out by playing all the lobs to Chingotto. But in the second set, I did feel that Galán was losing patience a bit and perhaps being a tad too aggressive and trying to cover too much of the court, going for too many smashes. And I guess it kind of paid off because they did make it to 7-5, but they had to recuperate a lot of break points. And yeah, I had a feeling that they were both kind of losing patience, and that led Coello and Tapia to the win.
Yeah, I think in terms of the unforced errors, I think we've spoken about the fact, I think in the past, that it just almost feels like it's by choice in a way because Coello and Tapia make you play at such an extremely high level that you're just not going to win if you pass the ball over. Like you almost have to, every single shot has to have some sort of intention and it has to apply some sort of pressure to Coello and Tapia because if not, they're just going to take advantage of it and they're not going to like let you go that easily. I get what you're saying with Chingotto. I think what maybe offensively, I wouldn't mind it as much if he does these unforced errors. I think some of them, which we saw also in this match, were from the back of the court, which that I feel like is definitely something that, you shouldn't do. You should, if you're defending, especially someone like Chingotto, which is one of his best attributes, if not his best, like you don't want to all of a sudden try to win a point from all the way at the back of the court because obviously I think that's completely, unnecessary. I guess if you are attacking and you're the one that has to kind of win the point, you're at the net, you want to be aggressive, then fair enough that you kind of maybe want to try and take some risks against Coello and Tapia. But I did see some of the unforced errors like from the back of the court, maybe like of like a shot of the glass where he's like trying to, cross court against Coello, and it's just like a bit like sometimes maybe something that you see Lebrón try to do, right? And you're like, Jesus, okay, like, if you pull that off, obviously it's an amazing shot, but potentially a bit risky. Definitely get what you're saying there, and like you mentioned as well, the returns of serves. I felt like that was something that both of them kind of struggled with, and obviously you can't give any free points to Coello and Tapia because I mean then you really have no chance. So I do want to highlight as well, maybe from Chingotto's side, something positive, which I think we've seen him develop over the last like couple of months is his smashing. Like, I honestly feel like now any ball that is like kind of in that volley area, he can like really put away. Like he has a reliable smash. I think like the level that we kind of see sometimes Martin Dineno, like of course not, from the line or maybe close to the line, but in that volley area, if there's like a lob and he's well, like, he's stood upright, he can definitely smash it. We see him as well try it a lot, which I think in the past balls that you would think like, oh, these are balls that you can definitely smash, like he wouldn't even try. Now he's trying, and honestly, it's paying off. Like I feel like his smash has increased a lot, which is great. And yeah, I mean, obviously a good sign to see him develop this kind of like weapon, and we'll see if obviously this helps them to get closer to Coello and Tapia. I think on Coello and Tapia's side, what really amazed me this match was the level of unforced errors. I mean, we all know like the winners and obviously the amount that they can generate from an offensive point of view, but I just felt like I don't know, I felt like they almost didn't commit any unforced errors. It was amazing. Like sometimes we see them, right? Sometimes we see them like Tapia, I don't know, like trying a rulo and hitting the fence, Coello with the volleys that potentially go a bit long. But this match, and if I recall correctly, I remember seeing the stats up to the end of the first set, and it was something like 37 winners and like 8 unforced errors, like between both of them, just like absolutely insane. Chingotto and Galán had less winners and more unforced errors, which potentially you would think like, okay, maybe Chingotto and Galán don't have as many winners, but for sure they either have, the same amount of unforced errors or even less, because you obviously have a player like Chingotto that gives you that kind of consistency and security. But to me, that really highlighted this match in particular, like Coello and Tapia just on another level, because they can generate so much offensively, basically like no other pair can do. But the fact that they're able to keep such low amount of unforced errors and play such a clean game, I mean, it's just remarkable, really.
Totally agree. And actually, one final point I do want to mention before moving on, because I don't think there's not too much
Yeah.
about it. Just feels like history on repeat. But the defensive work ethic from both Coello and Tapia, I just felt they looked unbelievably fit. I mean, like the
Mm.
fittest they've been. And they were so keen to work hard and maybe not go for just for the easy lob, but actually rather trying to get their body in the right position to play a lower ball. I mean, a lot of times where Tapia was going kind of left, right 4 times with Galán's obviously unbelievable volleys and still getting that ball back. And they weren't giving kind of any free points away. They weren't leaving any balls that were at all potentially reachable. I mean, we saw Tapia literally dive forwards outside of the court to try and make
That
a
was
ball
amazing.
that really wasn't actually that necessary, to be honest. But he still went for it. And so I think that's one thing that I've probably observed over the last few weeks is how much they've wanted
Mm.
to win. I mean, we saw how much they celebrated at the end. I mean, Tapia even crying. And I think they're probably absolutely knackered because they
Yeah.
play more than anyone else. Well, as much as Chingalan probably, bar 1 or 2 tournaments where Chingalan haven't made the final. So they're knackered. And even though they're the best pair in the world, they work maybe not the hardest, but they could be one of the pairs that works the hardest for sure. So I was really impressed by that. And I think they've really improved their defensive work rate and their defensive decisions as well. I mean, Coello, a lot of times in the past, I was slightly, I mean, this is coming from a very average player compared to him at best, but maybe taking too many risks from the back or not playing the right shot. And I feel like now he's just super in sync with what the pair needs and the shot he needs to play at specific times. So yeah, unbelievably impressed by them. And I don't really see the film changing
No,
between now and the end of the year.
no, really. Yeah. I mean, they're just clearly a level above. Like, how we also think about Chingalan and obviously Coello Tapia as well, a level above the other pairs, I mean, then Coello Tapia are basically in their own league, and they've shown it, these last couple of months where, as you say, maybe they feel like the motivation's there right now, and it feels like when they want it. I mean, even when they don't want it, they still win. So imagine when they do want it.
I think they've probably identified this kind of part of the season as crucial for them to maybe be able to relax a little bit towards the end of the season. I mean, we saw last season where by November, probably, kind of, I mean, objectives had been met. They'd, confirmed the number one spot for the rest of the season, etc. And they're probably thinking, if we're feeling good, if we're fit and we're playing well, let's make the most of it to basically try and cement our position as the number one pair for this year as soon as possible. And also just in case at any point we have a dip and Chingalan doing well, and you never know. Because, yeah, I think in sport, you've got to make the most of momentum. And if you're feeling good, I kind of have the feeling that that's what's happened with Coello and Tapia. They're feeling good and they've just said, right, let's go for it. Let's try and put the points gap as big as possible between us and Chingalan before momentum changes, which undoubtedly it will happen at some point because it always happens.
Yeah, exactly. No, I completely agree with you there. And maybe moving on, obviously we want to discuss as well the semifinals and the pairs involved in the semifinals. Maybe start with another encounter that now we've seen a couple of times, which is always nice. And I'm talking about Stupa and Lebrón against Chingalan. Obviously, always a bit spicy, watching a Lebrón against Galán. Obviously, great to have Lebrón as well back from the injury that had taken him from a couple of tournaments, and great to see him again with Stupa. But I mean, what a match! Very tight affair. I do think that Lebron was really incredible and played really well. I mean, some of the shots he does are just like honestly unbelievable. I think just in terms of talent, he's definitely him. I believe like him and Tapia. I think for me are the moment the most talented players on tour just from pure talent. Like you just don't know what they're gonna do when the ball comes out of their racket because it can just go anywhere. They can bend their hands like no other. They invent shots like they're just amazing. But on the other hand, we did see maybe Stupa struggle a little bit. Especially I felt like some of his defensively, like his lobs were like quite short, which Chingalan took advantage of. And I don't know. I mean, obviously we've seen this whole dynamic now between Stupa and Lebron, and how the whole pair has been really since they've been together, and it just feels like, I mean, clearly Lebron is the better player, but from a mental standpoint, and I get that, if you're Lebron, you obviously want to push your teammate, you want him to be better, but at what point is it just more harmful than good, if you see what I mean? I feel like all this pressure that Lebron is putting on Stupa just makes him perform worse. I don't know if you agree with that, Hugo.
Yeah, I mean, I thought it was an unbelievable match, as you said. And honestly, that first set, even set and a bit from Lebrón, is one of the best sets I've watched from a player, period. He was I mean, some of the things he was doing and the way he was dominating. And honestly, I felt that Stupa throughout the whole match, but it is true that towards the end of the second set, he did raise his level a little bit. But I thought that Stupa was miles away from Lebron's level, being honest and objective. I think from a playing perspective, it was very far away. And I think that first set, the reason why they lost it, even with Lebron playing his best paddle, was because Stupa was completely off it. I mean, I think he was a 5 out of 10 at best, probably less. He wasn't going for smashes, which kind of shows that his confidence isn't there. And just generally, he was just making a lot of unforced errors and the wrong decisions. So it is true that, as I say, towards the end of the second set, Stupa raised his level, and then Lebron made a few weird mistakes, even at the tiebreak at the end, that kind of just gave it to Chingalan. Not that Chingalan didn't play really well. I thought they were really, really good, and they had to be that good if they were going to beat Lebron playing as well as he was. But I felt that mental edge was what Chingalan had over Stupa and Lebron, and it seems to be that problem consistently. I mean, Lebron's beaten Galán once since they split, and Galán's beaten him something like 6 times now, which shows that he really has the upper hand from a mental standpoint. And I think that has kind of moved into the partnerships, kind of into the pairs' mentalities as well. I think Chingalan feel that they're a level above Stupa Lebron from a mental standpoint, and they know that when they get to the tiebreak and when they play the crucial points, they have the upper hand and they're more likely to win them, which must just give them a lot of confidence throughout the match. But yeah, I mean, addressing your point about Lebrón putting too much pressure on Stupa, I wanted to kind of launch a bit of a weird one here. Lebrón was very quick to post thanks Tarragona on his Instagram feed and looking forward to the rest of the season and tagged Stupa and Bozzoni, etc. Stupa hasn't posted anything at all since, which is very strange because players are very quick to post. And I mean, I'd be surprised if Stupa were to call it quits at this stage of the season, because I do think they're doing well. They're clearly the third best pair in the world. I mean, I think they're a level above anyone else below them, whether it's Gogi Yanguas, whether it's Oswald Dineno, etc. But yeah, I mean, Lebrón is definitely not getting the best out of Stupa. I mean, he had that unbelievable match against Galán and Chingotto in Valladolid with super fast conditions where they won. But I think that was more due to the court conditions than anything else. They had two very good smashers on one side, and then from Chingalan's side, obviously one very good smasher and one player that doesn't smash as much. So I think that really helped them. But beyond that, we haven't seen Stupa playing very well. He's played very below expectations. So is that due to just him not playing that well? It could be the case. I mean, he'll be the only one that knows. But I do have a slight feeling that it's probably influenced by Lebron's attitude. And if Stupa can't deal with him, then no one can. Because honestly, he's probably one of the most chilled guys on tour, and he's won with all his partners. So yeah, I am slightly worried in terms of the future of this pair, because I do like them. I do like them as a pair in terms of their potential, but Stupa's not getting the best. Well, he's not playing the best, and Lebron's not getting the best out of him. So I think that's when players start reconsidering. And hey, summer break ahead now. That's a full month of thinking that players have. Who knows?
No, I mean, and that's the thing with me, right? I think the words you use there are like quite adequate in terms of LeBron not being able to get the best out of Stupa, because I mean, I think it's fair to say that LeBron is the better player of, of them two, of the pair. So he, in a way, almost has to be that leader and trying to get the best out of his partner. And, I feel like from Stupa's side, and in a way, maybe he also feels like, LeBron is kind of the better player, like realistically, or at least, obviously all players think they're better than everyone, right? But realistically, Stupa sees like LeBron at least is the more accomplished player. I mean, that's like completely objective to say. So, if you're Stupa and you've got this guy who you're trying to get to his level, but at the same time, when there's like a little bit of a backlash, or there's a bit of a pressure moment, he just throws like shade at you, and he kind of belittles you in a way. Then it must be really hard. Like I can feel that, it must be really hard for him to be able to step up in those moments that LeBron requires him to step up, because like, he is technically I guess the worst player out of them too. Like I feel like with Galán, for example, Galán could easily be like, I'm better than you, and he probably has another mentality, I think, different to Stupa in that sense. So I don't know. I just feel like this dynamic where LeBron is not he should be that kind of leader of a pair and kind of like trying to bring Stupa alongside him and try to bring the best out of him. But in a way, I feel like he's almost devouring Stupa. Like, I really feel like he's putting him in such a pressure situation, like already with, the pressure that they do have when they're playing these high level matches and against, these pairs that they're trying to beat. So we'll see how it goes. I mean, I don't foresee any changes, of course, before the end of the season, but I do think that if things don't really change, I can definitely see a change, at the end of the season and a break after that, because the situation is just like not evolving in a positive way. And it feels like every time Stupa is, it almost feels like when he's playing, like LeBron's like watching him with, ferocious eyes, like waiting to see the mistake. And it feels like Stupa is kind of waiting for him to do the mistake and LeBron like just be on top of him, like, constantly, which is obviously not something that you want to feel. So we'll see. I mean, as you say, like if Stupa can handle him, then I really don't know who can, because he is one of the nicest guys out there.
I mean, I completely agree with you. If I was Stupa, I wouldn't change between now and the end of the season. Also because of the point situation. I mean, being
Yeah,
the
of
third
course.
seeded pair by quite a bit is very comfortable and a big advantage. But I've got to be honest, if it continues like it currently is going, I would split because I never thought that Stupa would be influenced by Lebron's personality and all these issues during the changeovers, etc. But now I do have a feeling that he is being influenced and that is affecting his game negatively. I may be wrong, but that is my feeling. And then from Lebron's side, I think it's really worrying because all his partners after Galán have not performed to their level. Is that down to him? Because
That's the thing, right?
Lebrón and Paquito wasn't. He was probably performing the best out of Lebron's last three partners, but still, there were moments in matches where we just weren't seeing the usual Paquito. And then with the Neno, definitely not. I mean, the Neno had a big dip with Lebron when Lebron went back to the backhand, and then now this. So
I just think that, there's a level of I'm playing with Lebrón, so that's obviously huge pressure, right? Because you have the pressure of I'm probably playing with someone that is the best in the world in their position, or like one of the best, and can be clearly number one. And he's partnered with me, almost like he chose me to be his partner. So there's a pressure on that, and then there's the pressure that Lebron puts, that he puts you on, of course, of like, oh, I miss, and he's on top of you, like telling you, why did you do that? Why didn't you do this? So I don't know, like it just feels as you say that it's gotten a bit into Stupa's head, and we'll see how it goes from here. Maybe this break like does him good, but I don't know if you felt it, but just comparing him now that we've seen him, let's say, play without Lebron and with Lebron, I just felt like it's just completely different worlds, right? When he was playing with Maxi Arte, I felt like there was like a freedom to his game, which I feel like with Lebron, it just feels like he's playing so tight. And surely that's like something mental.
100%. And I mean, personally, I think that the best player to get him back to his confidence, and I think it would make a lot of sense at the end of the season, is go back with Dineno. They both had their best versions together. They did really well. They challenged for the number one spot. Could that happen again? I mean, we've seen Dineno change partners about 6 times in the last year, so I could see it happen. And then
Exactly, yeah.
Lebrón with Augsburger is almost like a Lebrón 2.0. So could that actually work? Maybe.
No, and Asburger, I feel like has that level of confidence, like almost cockiness, that he'd be like, I don't really care what this guy says. Like I'm better than him,
Which I thought is what Stupa
which is what
had,
you need.
but
Yeah, exactly. But maybe not quite as much. But maybe moving on, and now that we've like mentioned Asburger and good time maybe to talk about them. Obviously, one of the new partnerships. And yeah, I mean they did reach the quarterfinals. I mean played against Coello and Tapia. I mean based on their seeding, I can't remember, they came out sixth or seventh. So, but anyways, I think around in and around there. I mean, obviously based on their seeding, kind of that's like the level that they were supposed to get to. I mean, a tight affair against Coello and Tapia, but I don't know. In a way, this match just gave me kind of confirmed what I thought about them. It's like sure they'll be there in the quarterfinals, but I just don't really see them competing against the very top, to be honest. I don't know if this is a harsh statement, obviously, seeing that it's like their first tournament. But I mean, unless they play in like, super extreme conditions where Augsburger can just really run around the court and smash absolutely everything, I just don't really see that they have that level, that kind of the top three pairs do, to be honest.
I mean, I saw encouraging signs. I actually liked their match against Coello Tapia. I do think that they overcame some pressure moments and points well. Yeah, they caused trouble against Coello Tapia. I mean, they did break their serve when Coello Tapia were quite far ahead in the second set, and it almost seemed like, hey, they could actually force a third set. So I liked some of the things. I think they're almost trying to replicate what Chingotto and Galán have with a super aggressive backhand player who covers a lot of the aerial side of the court behind the forehand player who gets up tight to the net and makes the most from aggressive volleys, etc., that being Mineno. So I think it can work. I do like them as a pair, but ultimately I just always think, are they going to be able to compete consistently with Coello and Tapia? I mean, this can change over time if Dineno gets back to his best, and obviously Augsburger is a very young player, so he can develop a lot over the next, say, 6 months or 12. However, will they stay together for that long? I mean, Padel normally says that won't be the case. So yeah, I mean, I'd be inclined to agree with you. I just think that being totally honest, I don't see any pairs challenging Coello Tapia in the short term because they are two of the three best players in the world and Galán's the other one. So Galán kind of has to find a player that can somehow be part of that select group, who in my eyes right now would only be Lebrón.
Yeah, and to be honest, I don't even know if they can challenge the top two. Like, I don't think that they are quite at the level of Chingotto and Galán as well, which it's kind of funny because obviously Coello and Tapia are the gold standard, but everyone against Chingalan, they lose. Like, and you almost it's almost like the feeling of when we see Chingotto and Galán play against Coello and Tapia, and you feel like Coello and Tapia have that confidence that even when they're behind, like, they've been there in that situation thousands of times, they probably know that they're better than Chingalan and they'll pull through at some moment. I feel like that's the exact same way that Chingalan has, like the mentality they have with everyone else. Like they just know they're better, and you can feel it in matches as well. So I don't think that really anyone at the moment can potentially bother the top two. Like the only ones that had an outside chance I felt were obviously in certain situations, but I was Brea and Cardona just because they were such an unorthodox partnership. They were in the right conditions. Obviously, both of them I felt like from a paddle point of view as well, like had actual arguments. That they could challenge them, and obviously they did beat both of the pairs. I mean, challenge consistently is obviously I think a bit of a different question, but I don't know. I right now I don't see how anyone can really take a stab at the two at the top.
Agree. I mean, I think taking a stab at Coello Tapia would mean having two ultra aggressive players that can replicate that model. It just feels like that's the only way to reach the top. I mean, we saw it with Lebrón and Galán, who obviously changed paddle, and it's now Coello Tapia. So it just doesn't feel like there's anyone else really that could pair up now and do it. I mean, by my eyes, Lebrón and Galán, but that won't be happening. And even that could go completely the other way because who knows what, if they reunited, whether they'd actually perform at their best. But yeah, I mean, I think maybe on the flip side, you'd say, I mean, the Neno and Oswaldo, their target has to be maybe make it into the top three. And can they compete against Stupa Lebron and Yanguas and Koki? I think they can. I just think that Oswaldo is such a dominant player and he's obviously got the best smash on the circuit, which is a key shot. So can he do it? Or can they do it as a pair? Yeah, I think they can. So maybe it's, hey, let's work towards this, see how we develop. And who knows? I mean, 6 months, things can change very quickly. And Oswaldo can maybe become and develop other abilities in his game, obviously being such a young player. Maybe that changes things. But yeah, I'd agree. Challenging the top two right now seems like, almost impossible.
Yeah, and maybe talking about the other new partnership, of course, the result of the I guess the union of Cardona, no, of the Neno and Osvaldo. Sorry, obviously we have the other pair, Cardona and Tello. I mean, they didn't have quite the resounding success that potentially Leo and Dineno had. So Tello and Cardona had a round one exit against Gala and Campagnolo. What a decent tournament themselves, by the way. But yeah, I mean, it was a tight affair in three sets. But I mean, not the performance probably that they were hoping for. And in a way, is this something that you could kind of see it coming when this partnership was announced? It kind of feels like they could either give you a super, good version that you're like, wow, these guys can, all of a sudden be right up there, or the other way could be one of those where straight away you're like, yeah, this is going absolutely nowhere. It doesn't make any sense. I think particularly maybe to just start really quickly, I think what kind of worries me is I would say from a mental standpoint, how both of these players feel. I think both of them kind of saw this as a bit of a surprise. Obviously, Dineno was the one that seemed to pull the trigger, so I'm sure that this kind of left Tello, in a bit of a shock. And we've seen how Tello, from a mental standpoint, is potentially not the strongest, just in terms of like this whole not necessarily in the game as well, but also about partnerships and splits, and we see that he's had as in terms of how he performed last season, and we've seen him in interviews kind of say how he's dealt with with tough moments personally as well, and how that's affected his mental standpoint. So it almost feels like he's a player that everything around him has to kind of be in a good state for him to be able to perform at his best on the court. And obviously Cardona as well. I think we saw him kind of have some words, if I'm not mistaken, with Pablo from the
I think
Cuarto
so.
set, or and kind of talking a bit about the situation as well. And you can kind of feel like he was a bit let down. He was a bit surprised about the decision, even though he kind of tried to make it seem like, no, it's fine, whatever, it happens. But to me, that's the key, right? It almost feels like I just wonder how these players have taken this decision by their partners and or their ex-partners, and how this is kind of portrayed on court, which I think is kind of what we saw in Tarragona.
Yeah, I mean, I think we already shared our major concern with them as a pair last week, or maybe the previous week in our other episode. And it was the mental side of their game. And I think that clearly showed. I mean, losing a 3-set tight affair against a significantly lower ranked pair that isn't used to, producing huge results and beating the top pairs is super worrying. Yeah, I just feel that partnership massively lacks a leader, being totally honest. I don't think they have neither player is a player that I'd say is going to grab a match by the scruff of its neck and really kind of, take the lead during the key moments. I think Dineno is that kind of player, funnily enough, and I think that's what was working with him and Tello. He's a very vocal, very emotional player, and I think he can do that. But I don't think Cardona and Tello are neither of them are that kind of person, that kind of personality, which is going to be a problem. I mean, who knows? Nerone has worked wonders as a coach, I'd say. He's done really well with Cardona individually as a player. I mean, he's developed so much. But I just don't have the feeling that pair will really be a threat for the top pairs. I mean, they can win maybe a bit of a random match against one of them in one tournament, but I don't think they'll be performing consistently at the highest level.
I would agree with you there. And maybe just before we kind of log off, I think some big news that we did want to end with, of course, on the women's side, that I know is something that we maybe normally don't talk a lot about because we just frankly don't have the time, and I would be here for hours. But we do, of course, follow the women's tour as well. And I mean, I think seems like it's a long time coming, but finally Gemma Triay and Delfi, well, reached the number one by beating the ex number ones now, I guess, Ari and Paula in in Tarragona. And I mean, amazing achievement from both of them. I think I read somewhere that Delphi, of course, is Argentinian, and it's the first time in 13 years that an Argentinian player kind of reaches the number one spot again on the women's side. Of course, on the men's side, we obviously have a long history of number ones being from Argentina, but kind of shows as well how Spain on the women's side has kind of dominated the tour. But I mean, huge congratulations both to Gemma and Delphi, who really had it like this year. I mean, they've been absolutely unbelievable. I feel like the women's tour has also been quite entertaining. I think quite opposite to kind of what we see in the men's. I think in the women's tour, you just have like so much parity. Of course, they're obviously the top three pairs that kind of dominate most of the time, but you do see kind of like one's winning a tournament and then another one wins a tournament. But I feel like Gemma and Delphi have shown that level of consistency. They've been absolutely amazing this year. I think it's fair to say as well that Gemma probably has been the best player on the women's side for quite a while now. So obviously, I don't think that any surprises to anyone that they reach that number one spot. We'll see if they do maintain it, obviously, and they finish off the season with the number one, which I would say is probably the main objective, but still huge from them. And kind of in a way as well, this validates kind of Delphi's decision. There was obviously huge controversy when she split with Bea Gonzalez and all the kind of controversy surrounding that split, but obviously it seems like her decision has paid off, and fair play to her, because that is also brave in a way to take on that challenge to be with Gemma and kind of perform. So, I mean, huge congratulations to them, and we'll see how it unfolds for the second half of the season, which promises to be quite good.
Yeah, I mean, it was a huge move from both players. I mean, Delphi, because of her personal relationship with Bea, we know they're super close and very good friends. So that must have been really tough and a hit for Bea, clearly. And then from Triay, she came out in that interview saying that perhaps Claudia wasn't ready for being the number one player in the world, and everything that meant. I mean, playing with Triay and having to challenge for that week in, week out. And it's paid off. It was a bold move, but I did think at the time it made sense for both players. I mean, I think from Delphi's standpoint, Triay is obviously, well, not obviously, but I'd say she's the best player in the world, the most consistent, and I think the most differential. And then from Triay's point of view, I do think that Delphi is still a couple of steps ahead of Claudia. I mean, Claudia's so young, and I just think Delphi has that extra aggressive side to her game that is essential against the top players and in those key matches against Ari and Paula. And then also just the experience point of view, right? I mean, Delfi's played World Cup finals for a number of years now. And I know Claudia played it last year, but it's obvious that Delphi has more experience, and I think that was key. So big congratulations. Great for the women's game, which, as you say, is super, super even. So yeah, all in all, great.
Yeah, and we'll see how the second half of the season unfolds, but promises to be good. Because yeah, obviously that's going to be quite big to see who actually ends the year as the number one ranked pair, which is the main objective always. But yeah, I mean, this probably brings us to the end of the episode. I do hope that everyone's enjoyed, and Hugo, as always, it's been a pleasure. And yeah, this probably also means that, given there's no paddle, we'll probably be signing off for a couple of weeks at least, and then we'll be back into the, full swing of things for when the Madrid P1s arrive. So yeah, everyone, go start watching highlights, old finals of Lebrón and Galán, and, thinking what could be next. But yeah, anyways, as always, I do hope that you have enjoyed, and we'll catch you next time.
Yeah, guys, definitely do that because I will be watching all sorts of highlights and catch you in a few weeks.